Lauren and Danny, you'll need to unmute yourselves. Welcome to the AACG meetup for April 16th, 2021. Today, we are lucky to have Danny Lane and his daughter, Lauren Lane, who are going to take us through Danny's present work. And I've seen previews of this present work from London, England, and I have to warn you, it is going to be spectacular. Today, the program may go a little longer than we normally go. There's a lot of material to cover. Housekeeping for today. If Danny Lane is standing in one place, we can ask him questions. But if Danny Lane is wandering around, which he does all the time, we'll have to hold the questions till he stands still. So what I'm letting you guys know is, if you're not sure, put them in chat, but we'll do the best we can to keep him in one place. Larry Sybrick will be co-hosting with me today since I have a commitment at 1 o'clock with a pipeline. And if we run over, Larry will be handling. And Danny Lane, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Oh, thank you.
And Danny, you have an echo.
Yeah, it's a problem because I'm sitting right next to Lauren. I'm going to turn it off, and I need to see what you got. How do we turn her off or me off? Oh.
I go.
I think we're good now. Please proceed, Dan. I think we turned both of you off.
Getting a picture. Hello, can you hear me now?
Now I hear you. Okay, go ahead, Danny.
Okay, so yes, it's a pleasure to just land with all of you, those who I know and have met, and those who I don't met. My old buddy Ray King is there, and just a great pleasure, and deeply moved. I am American, but have been in England for a long time, since the 70s. In fact, both Ray and I got collected from the airport in a half-timbered car, one of those old Morris Minors, or no, maybe it was a Volkswagen bus, on the same day in 1975. And we've been tight buddies ever since. We both came over here to study with the great artist, stained glass artist, Patrick Renshens. And for me, it was a great jump in 75 to arrive in England. I had only dabbled in stained glass as a young one in when I was 20 or so, and basically came over to do the stained glass course with Patrick Renshens. And Patrick, we had a fabulous year, which there's too much to say about that, but Ray and I and a half a dozen other American artists traveled with Patrick, and we just had the most fantastic adventure, absolutely fantastic adventure. And I stayed on to work with Patrick. I was meant to work and study with him to carry on, but his whole business, as many great artists, went bankrupt. And he disappeared. And so me and a few friends, we squatted the house, and I saved up some money to go to art college here. We went to, and I came into London and to study painting at the Central School of Art and Design, where I met the fantastic artist Cecil Collins. And, I really, painting and drawing just became my center line. Upon leaving art college, I'd gotten married to Lauren and Joe's mom, and obviously had to earn a living. And so I had this concept of making applied art objects inspired by Isamu Noguchi, the great Japanese American sculptor. And he was so inspiring to me because he was somebody who, like in all great traditions, walked across the boundaries of art and design. And he was poo-pooed. In fact, in Philadelphia, where Ray hails from, Isamu Noguchi was commissioned to do a huge bridge, a sculpture on the bridge. And they turned it down and whatever, but he made the most fantastic work and the most beautiful applied art objects. So I launched into this as an idea of making things out of glass, not things that I would call sculpture, but semi-functional objects. I think you can go on to keep flowing with just images while I say this. So I had that's a period that I call a college of hard knocks. I really didn't know how to make anything, and I got work as a builder. I did all kinds of things to support my young family, and did everything the hard way, basically. But I was already involved in applied art when in the 80s I met a wonderful guy called Ron Arad, who had a shop in Covent Garden, and he was one of the he's Israeli. He had a fantastic handle on design, wonderful guy. And I always call him a sort of radon on TVs of design, because he just kicked ass. He did such incredible things in the 80s. And it was a lively time in London. We'd sort of come through the punk rock phase. There were, wealth was going up and down. And so I got really focused in making furniture or design objects. I think we can start moving ahead now. That's okay. Yeah, and so basically this screen here was one of my very first drawings, which was a sandblasted drawing on glass. And this was on the roof of the Metropolitan Hospital, where I had one of my first studios. And in the Metropolitan Hospital, I had the old X-ray unit. In this X-ray unit, we had this sort of lead-lined space, and there were all kinds of different people working there. And so my history was not so much coming out of the study of glass or let's say glass blowing, which many of you are very keyed into, or even casting. I was really applying myself with float glass and making design objects. My work was being sold. Where are we going there? Okay. Yeah. So my work was really being sold in the design arena, which, if you think of design, we went from Geoponte through to Memphis in the 70s. And then from Memphis, we here in England, there was a huge boom in avant-garde furniture with myself, Tom Dixon, a number of people who were making objects. Now, and this chair was rapidly became an icon in the 80s. Are you okay there? Yeah. And the very first chair, I made two glass chairs at that time. This one, which was called the Etruscan Chairs. And I had all of the, it was made in a very friendly way. It was, I had a friend who was a blacksmith who forged the legs. And I had already been exploring glass and had learned how to fracture glass. It was something that really hadn't been explored greatly by other people in this early 80s time. And I came up with that concept for the chair and began making other objects. Now, just back to that chair. The fascinating thing is on this chair, I sold about 6 to a wonderful woman in Toronto, Canadian, called Lynn Thompson, who comes from the big publishing family. And she said, "Danny, I love these chairs, but they're drilling holes in my floor." And I had never really considered that. So I ran next door to the little guy who was making shoes next door and said, "Jimmy, you got any high heel shoe tips for these things?" And of course, this turned out to be Jimmy Choo shoes. And he had a little unit right next to me. And these pieces then got exposed all over Europe. And I began to develop a name for myself, really through exposure in Italy, because in Italy, they don't actually believe in unique pieces. They say, "Why should you?" But whereas we in England, we were making objects and making very expressive objects, things that were maybe derived from art trends or different things. And there were probably half a dozen different people who became quite well known. Here's the studio in Hackney. I wish can you point, there's the wonderful Daryl Davis. Daryl Davis, the Bajan dreadlock, number of people. This was in the X-ray unit, probably the only photograph we have. The great Vincent O'Brien, who worked with me for many years, who's left the building now. Keep going. And I would just make these objects. I was living quite cheaply. And so, for instance, I got obsessed with the idea of a kind of a mummy-like object. This is called Yemanja. I'd been to Brazil and been voodooed there. And so I made this concrete figure with shelves of glass. And there were as many drawings on the inside of it as there were on the outside. Keep going. And so I wasn't really working on the thing of doing shows. And like, if you think of painters and a lot of glass artists, they're working and selling through galleries and work to have a show. I was working a lot on commission. And for instance, this was a project to design an enclosure for a boardroom in one of the old dock buildings by the river. And I made this whole construction out of toughened glass. Is there another slide to that? Yeah. And go back one. And so these were sort of ad hoc, very painterly approach to materials. It's all safety glass, all drilled and bolted. But I got off onto a track that nobody had really explored, of using glass. You know, these were constructions that weren't really designed. They kind of happened. And I would work on them live in the studio and develop them. And they soon got quite a lot of attention in this design arena. Next, please. And for instance, here, this is something that it was called a scapegoat. And it was a little drinks trolley made out of float glass. It had small wheels that had ball bearings, and you could grab it by the horns and pull it around. And so one of the things that I've really done, next, please, was to bring in a lot of mixed materials. Now, this is an odd one. This was made at Ray King's studio in Philadelphia. Ray had just bought this building, and I had to do a show at the Javits Center with a group of English artists. And next to Ray was this huge brewery. And so what you have here is the brewery trolley, and then we bandsawed up all the little bits of tubing, which you can sit on. And I hauled this thing up to the Javits Center, along with the thing that you see there, another trolley that was covered in wool. I brought over about eight or nine sheep. I'd been to a sheep shearing show and brought over the wool. That's the only thing I brought with me to New York to do this show. Next, please. So it was big fun, a lot of big fun. It was very, very exciting time. And the work would be shown in various contexts. I had a great gallery in Milan, who I still deal with, called Dilmos. And all of these pieces have a story or a kind of narrative. For instance, this piece, which is, I think, one of my very important early sculptural pieces, is called Angribe. And I'd been asked to do a bed for a show called British Homemade that was shown in France. And all of the trees had been blown over. There was a big storm in England. So I had gone down to a furniture museum called the Jeffrey Museum, found the wood, cut all of this glass and draped it across these branches. And lo and behold, you could lie on this thing. It was actually stable. And so it is a bit of a chaise longue. And here you have, this is the famous Campana brothers, who are renowned in design now. And they took, I went to Brazil and gave a lecture there, and this lecture inspired them to go into furniture design. And here they are at what was that, 2000 and something
2009.
2009 exhibition in Milan, where I showed this piece again and ran into these Brazilian reprobates again. But I was always, you see, in these processes, and this as well, these are pieces that are made, I would say, in a very shamanistic kind of way. They're assemblages where For instance, this piece arrived at, well, first back to that engravre, just to go through it quickly. My next door neighbor was Egyptian, and I had the concept of this bed, and it was derived from a four-posted bed that's made a traditional poor man's bed that you would see all over the world, tied together with rope. I dropped two legs off of it to resemble an American Indian travois, where we drag the family around behind a horse, and loaded it with glass. And it just had that kind of development, which was just ad hoc, a kind of anarchic. Next slide, please. And so next one. And so this piece, which is called the woodcutter's table, came when, what is her name? She's a curator here, and her husband had wanted a desk, and they'd been to John Makepeace to look for a desk, and they said, Danny, could you do us a wooden desk? I said, don't really do wood. And then I thought about it for a while, and I had just gotten a table saw, so I sawed up everything in my studio, like old workshop benches, had cinder blocks and things in it. And this was in the Metropolitan Hospital. Found this enormous chain, stretched it around the piece and compressed it, inspired from various things about creating an arch, the compression of an arch. But it's actually like a very big Jenga. Little pieces might fall out and you have to crank it a little tighter. So this wonderful client, she came to look at it, and they were absolutely in love with it. But they said, listen, they said, actually, John Makepeace is a great furniture designer over here. He tried some new ideas on us and it didn't work out. We don't want to go for this thing. So I've hauled this thing around over the years. It's been very exciting. So keep next. And so things evolved in that way. And at one point, now this is an interesting piece, but we'll just keep moving through. We had this wonderful gentleman named Peter Joseph who had a gallery in New York, and Wendell Castle told him he ought to come over and meet me and have a look at what I was doing. Thought I was interesting. And like a damn fool at that time, I decided I'm not doing furniture anymore. I'm tired of making everything stand up straight and not wobble. And so I moved over into public artwork, kind of taking a feather from my buddy Ray King, who's so successful in public art. And so we moved into that, and in a big way. And I said to Peter, well, listen, man, I'm not really doing furniture anymore. And said, oh, what a pity. And he ran for a little while before he unfortunately left the building. And then, so I carried on with these larger scale public art objects. And then Jennifer Opie, the curator at the Victoria and Albert, she came along to the studio and said, we're redesigning the glass gallery. What do you think? Do you think you could do us a balustrade or something here? And I said, I'm not really sure what to do. So we would have these intensive brainstorming meetings with the architect, the engineer. Jennifer would show up sometimes, until I came up with this concept, which was far too simple for me. It was so minimal. And it really is, it's like a stack of CDs, 4-inch squares of glass, running 30 meters, 30, 40 yards down the Victoria and Albert Museum. And we went for it and installed it. And it was a very interesting technical feat, because one of the things that I'm a bit of the granddaddy of is this thing of post-tensioning glass. We basically, I learned early on with one of the chairs that by shish kebabbing the glass and putting a steel rod through it, I could torque it, in other words, tighten it to incredible limits. So on the project with the V&A, we took a piece to a block of glass to the laboratory and proved that glass is maybe 10 times, 15 times stronger than concrete and even granite in compression. And that led towards a lot of the sculptures you're seeing here, where I began to make solid volume sculpture out of hundreds of layers of glass. And I was one of the first people who'd done this. And now it's all over China. There were precedent examples of it, but I think I've done it to death. Done a lot of this now. But and it's there are nuances and characteristics in this glass, the optical qualities that are very hard to see in a still photo. Next. So we moved along in that direction. I moved to the studio here in West London, which was a big jump, set up a metal workshop, and just continued to explore the dynamics of float glass, as you see. And this piece, which is called Against the Wall, which I'm oftentimes against the wall financially or in other ways. I just always push it to the limit. So we like that. And there is a product, you see. I think one of my clients said, I like my artists poor and struggling. And I think there's a certain truth to that, because a great teacher of mine, she said, Danny, if you could have truth in a second, all you need to do is knead it like a drowning man needs air. And I think this is a really powerful dynamic for us artists, to get ourselves into a situation that we've got to fight our way out of. And this piece actually started from a project in China, early days in China. I made this test piece up, which is Against the Wall, for this next project, which was a commission in Canary Wharf. And we love Canary Wharf. At that time, it was this is a very powerful Orthodox Jewish crowd who owned Canary Wharf. And this project here was I've called Parting of the Waves, because it was a passageway through a building, and there's Moses sitting in the distance at the desk. And
Danny, I have a few questions for you real quick. First of all, when did y'all install the work at the V&A?
94, I think, 1994.
Okay. And
do you know? Yeah.
And thank you. I didn't mean to bother you on that. And Ellen Greenberg asked, is there work? What kind of kiln work is involved in the stacking and the making of the pieces?
Absolutely no kiln work. It's all cold glass. And
cold glass,
that's been, so it is all, this sculpture that you're looking at is the same piece of glass times about however many thousands. And so it's been how to trick a form out of a single unit of glass. And all it is, it's held in place by gravity alone. Some people look at it and say, how the hell did you get that into the building? And basically, well, it's gravity. It's still there, looking good, just been a fantastic work. And
so yes? Tim Tate asked about the pieces in the video underwater. Where is that piece? Where are those pieces?
That's in Tobago. I was commissioned to design an underwater sculpture park, which never flew. It never took hold. And that is, Lauren, is that video available on?
I can send a link.
Yeah, we'll send you a link, because that should be on our Vimeo page. And we did a fantastic presentation, and I actually made 2 sculptures which were sent and submerged. And then we never heard back from the people. It was unbelievable. It was all looking very good. Somebody, I think, ran off with the money. It was a strange situation.
That happens. But, yeah. Now, Eva Klein asked, are you saying that there is no adhesive between the cold glass pieces? She thinks
not in my lenticular walls in these pieces. We do secure them mechanically and with compression, but no, totally. And that's the beauty of it. It's just free gravity. Go back to Against the Wall. So if you look at this piece, which was really, it's so important, and I still own this one, but it's a tricky one to sell, because it's 27 feet long and needs a location, but it led to so many things. But what there is at the foot, there is a curb, a little step, And then it's all leaning into the wall and up against the steel beam at the end. So as we set this up, and there are videos of this, it's phenomenal. They just go up, 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 and it's just death by numbers. Like
so you don't have to use heat or anything, correct? It's just compression based on physics.
No, exactly. And look at this one here. This is General Motors in Detroit. I was asked by Skidmore, Owings and Merrill to come up with some concepts for the lobby of General Motors and the Renaissance Center, because they had some problems with, they wanted a big feature there, didn't know what to do. The guy who designed the Burj, Adrian Smith, the Burj Khalifa in, is it Abu Dhabi, the tallest building in the world. He was the guy who flagged me, and it was Jerry Hines, who I think Ray's done some work with Hines, big developers. And it was incredible, this piece, structurally. So we did have trouble, like building a medieval building. We got halfway through and the whole thing started falling over. And I thought I had to go back to the think tank, and I have the most fantastic engineering associates. Obviously, on something of this scale, this was not made in my studio. It was made in conjunction with my engineer, Anthony Smith, who's a just lovely guy, and a Scottish company. And then we've carried on to other pieces like this. I've done lots of work with property developers. This is British land. These strips of glass are 7.5 meters tall. And you can see by the scale. Next, please. Yeah. But the quality of light, people, I tell you, I mean, that's what all of us who work with glass are just obsessed with. And I'm sure all of you who are fans of the glass artists and things and collect these things, it's just, what can you say? I mean, now this is a lovely thing. This is Roberto Sant'Ambrogio, who has a house in Lugano, and he commissioned this through the Gallery Dilmos in Milan. And this was we've called it Lugano Sale. So I've also moved more towards intimate domestic pieces. And then this is for my dear client, Peter Kershaw, for his house in Portugal. And look, that's one side back again. That's the same piece, okay? And this is called Passagère de Luz. Next, and here goes Fiona walking by. Next, go, okay, back. So you can see how the light is affected there. It's just absolutely magical. It's a whole, I've really enjoyed these pieces. I'm not, they're hard work, but very exciting. Next. So then the wonderful Annie Carlano was brought to the studio by Jennifer Opie, who commissioned the piece for the V&A. And this is for a project called 10-10-10 in Charlotte, North Carolina, for the museum. And do people see that? Okay. And they had asked me to come up with some ideas for this new gallery that was given, the gallery space was donated by, it's a great collector of Lubensky. Gorilnik is the guy, and he commissioned this huge Lubensky that's very important in the collection. So you enter the gallery, and this points the way right to this huge Lubensky. And this was one that was developed. I'd already started working in color and pouring these huge color discs. And so in this piece, I didn't just have the sculpture, but I made all this whole scene behind it. And this shows you the kinetic action of the lighting there. See? Okay, next.
Bill Gorelick, apparently.
Bill Gorelick, yeah.
Someone just replied.
Okay, thank you. Fantastic. And I bonded with North Carolina. I met Fleur Bressler there. She donated a chair. And okay, we better move on. Okay, so then another form that I work with a lot that has been something I've gone is this sort of fractured split of the wall, which, it has a metaphor for broken glass, which we do. But I think we pushed it a long way. So the very first one you saw there, which is called Split Wall, then Leka Podar, a great client of mine in Delhi, commissioned this work for a house in Delhi on a big farm there. Next. And then another Indian client commissioned this piece, photographed in the studio. And then this is the wonderful Tom Perkins, who he had the 60th story of the Millennium Tower. And his yacht designer is a guy who I know, and he designed this house and commissioned a number of pieces from me. And this piece, the floor loading, this weighs about 5,000 kilograms, 4,000 or 5,000 kilograms. And if you look at that, that is hung from the ceiling because he's in the penthouse. And we actually had to suspend this from the ceiling. My engineers are so cool. You know, they worked out the way. And how else could we get a huge object up to the top of the building? So these are all fun commissions. Okay, next. And then this is for Microsoft in Cambridge, Microsoft Research. And the director had seen my work at an exhibition at Jesus College and commissioned this at the entranceway of this. And this is probably where I've gotten to with this work. I'm working on a commission of this nature again now. So these moved along. Keep on. Shall we keep on going? Okay, keep going. Keep going, please.
Slow for some reason.
Okay, we'll see. It's taking some time.
Yeah.
It's thinking about it. Okay. But if you look at it, these pieces are grown. These are not designed as a whole. And what I'll do in process is to make the sculptures. And when I take you for a quick walk through the studio, I'll show you one that's just in its blank format where the shape has been drilled. And then we move down the sculpture, cutting bevels. And this is in Lagos, Nigeria, and carved. And so I spent a long time with that, and that's still going on. There's still so much to learn there. So as you know, there's certain pieces that at the beginning, the first piece is very raw. The craft might not be so good on it. And then it's really worth following through that theme to push it further. Now, this is a great client, British Land, and they commissioned this. It's on Edgware Road. And at first I was going to make big cast bevels. I was already starting to cast glass, but unfortunately it was too expensive to do. And so I did this entirely out of plate glass. And this is layers of 3/4 inch glass that have been beveled and chipped and tempered. It's safety glass. And it's even been designed for the ease of cleaning, that you can roll each piece out of the way to clean them. Because that's half of the thing with architectural projects, as many of us artists who work on that scale know. These things have to be responsible and have to be serviceable. And that's always an issue. It has to come with a manual. Okay, and then another one, okay, so my friend David Taylor, I better move on quickly. My friend David Taylor came and sold me a furnace. And I thought, well, this furnace is very clever because he loves color and it drains completely. It's called a micro melt. And so I figured, I got David to jig it up so we could hoist it up in the air, pull the plug, and pour these huge puddles into the kiln. And so we get an actual meniscus. And we made all of these colors out of, and I'm not a glass blower. I have to hire people who are better than me at that to do the glass blowing. And I've relied on really talented people, an artist here called Max Lamb, David Taylor, Liam Reeves, who's the head technician at the Royal College of Art, and all sorts of really talented people have kindly helped me, given me the hand holding in this. Also the great glass caster, Angela Thwaites, she's come into the studio to help teach me. And then, okay, so this is quite interesting. So being all of us glass people were material freaks. We're just so absorbed in material and engineering. So I'd worked out how to pour these damn discs and remortgage my flat. And what the hell am I going to do with this glass? So I figured I'm going to do these architectural pieces and laminate them to substrates. Go back one. And so here, no, back one. Yeah. So what I've done is I've used handmade mouth-blown glass from Lambert's in Germany. And that's been water jet cut through very accurately. And then it's fit to a hand-fractured disc of cadmium and selenium colored glass that we've made here in the studio. So this is a big area. I'm still excited about this. I think this is a stained glass window you can pick up by the nose, basically. So, and then here it is in a domestic setting in a house. Yeah, it's quite interesting. So keep going. Okay, and they're quite sizable panels, and they're fun to move around. Very, very exciting. But the color's very exciting. Next. And then this is in Rockville, or no, what's the town? This is like Rockville, Maryland. A sculpture about 4 meters tall with granite bases that I designed and were made in China. Yeah, it's in Virginia. But the granite was made in China along with benches. Next, please. And what's done in these sculptures, which is quite interesting, it's shish kebabbed onto an inch steel rod, and then we hydraulically stretch that steel rod 2 inches, tighten the nut, and let it go. So the compression is all that's holding that into place. So there's a great deal of science and tech in this. Again, my buddy Ray King, he's a great one with this sort of technology thing. We operate in different ways, but it's a very important side of this because these objects there's a lot of due diligence. Now, on this piece, I'm going to need to turn it there because I'm getting blinded by the sun. So on this piece, this is a great client in Zug, Switzerland, where it's a great tax place, and they run a huge oil company, a lovely Israeli woman, Dutch husband, both glass collectors, exciting. And they had asked me to design a glass stairway. And, to do that structurally, I said, well, what were you going to put in there anyway? And the Swiss architect, who's very, very good, had designed the steel stairway. I said, well, why don't I just hang the art off the stair treads? And so as a result, we did 2 or 3 flights of this carved glass. Next, please. Okay, back one. And back one more, please. Thank you. Okay, so you can get the feeling for it. And so we really did a sort of bang for buck analysis because, these things can, I'm not, the structure of it, I'm more interested in how the thing looks maybe than trying to make a glass stairway. There are a lot of people who can do that. So next, please. Yeah, okay. Then I have a friend who runs a CNC company. And I got approached by a big American interior design company who was working in Moscow. And they they wanted a 12-meter long boardroom table. Putin sits at this thing evidently. And they run all the hydroelectric stuff and, like water, big dams and things. And they asked me to design this table. And so this was a major work of love. This was, so we had the profile cutting and all of the super technical CNC work done elsewhere, brought into the studio, and then we hand carved the whole thing. And as a sandblasted drawing, and then so much going on. And so great fun. And then this is, Rani Aluwalia's dining table. And this was quite fun. She came into the studio looking for a glass handrail and walked out with this. It's really fantastic fun. And this was really great fun. So this is one that I really want to carry on with. And if you look to the left on this image, we had to have a join in this piece because I didn't want to make it 6 meters long in one piece. It's too difficult. So in order to do that, I cut the center and made this big bubble in the middle, which was carved out, and we got away with murder. Go back to the long shot. No, the long one. Keep going. Okay, now where does that join go? Can you see it? It's just, if you have a look on the website and blow it up on this piece, it's called Stillwater Rising. And they're just intrinsic, mysterious things in each of these pieces and it really gets into this. I'm really having a lot of fun on these commissioned works. Keep on going. Yeah, keep going. So, go just quick film on there. do a quick film. A lot of this stuff, we don't want to take up too much time with this, but if you look down.
So Danny, we're 40 minutes into the presentation, and the focus I'm getting is that you're moving towards more smaller commission works for businesses and homes and individuals than you are trying these monster installations like Ray King's been doing, correct?
Okay, we're just there moving into that. So now here is where I began casting. And this was the same gentleman, Tom Perkins, who's the venture capital behind Google. He asked me, he'd seen a table that it looked like a block of ice. And in fact, it turned out to have been a block of ice. And he said, damn, I can't buy that thing. He said, Danny, do you think you could make me something that looked like a great big block of ice? And I said, well, I'll have a go, Tom. and so I bought in 2,500 kilograms of this amazing glass. And we cast it over 4 months. And got there, keep going. Yeah, there we go. And there we managed to get it up into Tom's apartment there. Okay. And the funny thing was it weighed, actually, the elevator was rated for 4,000 pounds. And this thing weighed 4,800. And but fortunately it had been tested, and you wouldn't have believed it. We rolled it into the elevator. The elevator sunk 3 inches. But we managed to get it in, and it's all illuminated. And that piece was so exciting, I can't begin to describe it. Now that's all LF5, a shot glass. So this is where we begin with the casting. So having done a bit of casting, I did some experiments and came up being a sort of gestural painter by nature and messy. I thought I can't really design things and make them exactly. And after a lot of experimentation, I came up with a way of carving into plaster with angle grinders and things in a very free form way that really became a 3-dimensional abstract expressionism. And all of these pieces are done in float glass. They're about 1 meter square. And this is the new work that I'm doing. And these are plinth mounted. I can show you a couple of things next. Now, this is about 3 meters long. This is, again, a big narrative piece. And I'm thinking of the Basai friezes, the ancient Greek friezes, when I'm doing these and developing things along this method. So a lot of these have been developed over the last 4 to 5 years. And this is a in-house technique, and this one's called marine archaeology, and is a very raw piece that has been devitrified completely. So currently I'm exploring this. And so having worked with that green glass back one, I managed to secure 30 tons of optical glass from a company that was shutting down. And there's Lauren and Michael Stockniak with a forklift full of it. And this is a big fountain that was done with the previous technique. This is, again, commissioned by a very dear client of mine. And it was a waterfall that had water running down it in the garden. And as you can see, it's all been designed. And the key thing here, my friends, is that it's a live process. You know, a lot of times designed objects are so fixed, whereas this has a real freehand graphic. Next, please. And so with that optical glass, having secured it, I had a great commission from a client of mine to make some small illuminated sculptures for their new house in South Africa. And at the time, the wonderful artist Angela Thwaites, I don't know if any of you know her, but she's written a book on casting, and absolutely wonderful person. And she just finished her course at Sunderland doing digital printing. And she, what's the guy's name in Sunderland? The guy's head of glass at Sunderland. He said, why don't you do this other thing where you go work in a big studio with somebody, a commercial studio, and see how that gets on. So she came to see me and we had a ball. Angela helped me so much with these very delicate pieces. No, it isn't Kevin. I'm just trying to think. I think he's Japanese American. I'm just trying to, I'll remember his name in a minute. Really lovely man. And so we began to, sorry?
It was Jeffrey Sariamento.
Exactly. Exactly. And so he sent Angela in my direction. We just got on like a house on fire. She trained some of my people here. And these are sort of box castings where I take a block of plaster, carve the living daylights out of it. And for me, with all of that big stuff that's been made in the past, it's just such a joy to do something tiny and minute. And I'm working with tiny little tools carving into the plaster. And these are turning out to be very successful. Everyone's different and they're migrating in different directions and they're really pleasant. I'm just having a ball with them. Of course, keeping this big studio afloat. I'm still doing large scale works, but very exciting. Next, please. So this is very current, these pieces. They're quite exciting. Now, Lauren's done a couple of little films of pieces here in the studio, so you can have a look at. This is another one, another form. And these are,
Danny, one of the questions was, how are you lighting that big table? How are you lighting these pieces?
Okay, thank you. That's a very important thing. Very important question, because I have state of the art, some friends who own companies that design lighting. They're high lighting engineers. So on these are illuminated with, we call it dynamic white, where you have strips of LEDs, very tiny ones that can go from 3000 Kelvin to 6000 Kelvin. And these are controlled by your cell phone. So you can dim it down to nothing and back up. And in this case, these are illuminated from the base and very simply, okay? And if the light, because they're small, these are only about, I guess, 10 or 11 inches, maybe 12 inches by 11. And, quite petite. And they're all illuminated there. That's a wall mounted bracket that you see, which contains the LED at the bottom. And there's also one at the top on this other style of work. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so then I'm not going to go into steel too much because you guys are probably more glass oriented. Just go back one or two. But steel is a big love. That's a stainless steel tagliatelle table that's forged. We do a lot of furniture pieces like that as well. Keep going. Okay, and then here is a big cast. This is very contemporary. This is for a client in India, and it's a piece called River. And these are huge, I call these fuse casts, where I'm taking hundreds of strips of glass and fusing them together acrobatically. And I've chosen to sit this new series of work on marble because it gives off a lot of light. And the marble's scattered around their house in Bombay. And then let's see, what do we have next? Do we have Howard's piece?
I have a video of River, but do you want to go
Okay, go ahead. Do a quick one. We'll move along quickly. I don't want to bore you all too much. Okay, so that gives you a little video of how it moves. And of course, that's the thing about these pieces. These are all machine polished on the top. We have some really great toys for polishing glass. So they're quite big, heavy, like hernia pieces. I've got a hernia now. Okay, and the marble is so, here it is. Now, is Howard with us? I don't know if Howard Cohen, but Howard and Myra, they had seen my work at the Corning show, and there was something in what was it?
1:30.
Yeah.
Howard is on. Howard, can you unmute yourself?
Hey, Howard.
So
And
I hope
Howard had to leave, but I'm holding down the fort.
Yeah.
okay. Well, this was really exciting because Howard got in touch and said, and said, listen, we really like this work. We're doing a new place. We'd like a coffee table and see a few things. And I said, well, it's a long way away. We'll have to talk through. I've got some interesting pieces of glass. And I sent a few through, and he said, well, we need a little break. We're going to come over to London. And so they came over and they had a look around the studio, and I had this fabulous, huge casting of glass that had been done. And I said, oh, we like diving and looks just like the Caribbean. And so I began to work on this piece, and again, took the marble and started forming the marble. And I've only just now found a title for it. I've called it Piranesi in the Sea Turtle, because they're into diving. The big piece looks like a great big turtle. And so we've had a lot of, look at the projection of light on there, though, a lot of fun. And they were so lovely and patient about installation. These things come with quite interesting installation instructions. And COVID. Next one, please.
And that's like them moving into.
Okay. Oh, we didn't get the one of, you didn't get the one of, we tried to put the picture up, Howard, that you sent us of the piece at home. You're going to have to go to Howard's house to see it. Now, this is another commission. And you see, these commission pieces are very exciting because they start with a dialogue, and then it moves on. Just go back one. Okay, I better move along quickly. This is a piece called Turn, 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 which is in a client's house in North Carolina, in Charlotte, North Carolina. And then this is a huge dining table. How much more do we have? We're almost there. Now, some of you may know the wonderful Fleur Bresler. And Fleur decided she needed a new dining table and gave it to herself for her 90th birthday. And this thing weighs 3 tons, had to go up tiny elevators. So it was designed in components and fits together. And it's just absolute madness. I mean, we just had so much fun making this piece. And what it is that these are showstoppers. These are big dialogue pieces. You want to move through? Yeah. Show a little bit of the installation, just a quick bit. Does it go quickly? Yeah, it's moving pretty quick.
Oh, no,
okay, crates. Okay.
No, this is how it's coming.
They're the crates going through.
They're not saying
okay.
It. This is what they're saying. Not the screen.
I'll just show a little. There we go. Is that Fleur?
Yes.
Are you there? Ah!
Yep. I'm not doing anything for my 95th.
I've got a hernia. Fleur. But this piece, and her son Ed Bresler is just a star. We would have never gotten it there without him. You know, it's just unbelievable. And I think this, you've said this might be the last piece you commission or something. I hope I didn't put you off commissioning artwork. But
no, this was the last thing I commissioned.
Oh, we had a ball on it. And it really is, that's where I've gotten to with steel and glass furniture pieces. It was just such a joy. We had so much fun on. And let's keep, what else do we have? I think we're almost near the end. We could flick through. So that's probably it. But there's a lot more where that came from. But one of the things that I just would say is that a lot of artists are, you know, studio, hardwood floors, art galleries, you know, make a piece in their studio and then put it to the market. People come and buy it. And, you know, it's an interesting process. I really wish I had come that way, but it just hasn't gone that way for me. So most of my work, or at least 70% is on this commission basis. And I'm fortunate enough to have people who, I mean, Fleur was, she gave me like a pretty much open brief, you know. I had to really come up with something decent for her. And, you know, we work on these things and there's a real dialogue. And I find that it's been magical, this journey. It's been really important because, you know, we work on things that, you know, they evolve. I think they kind of make themselves, if you will. And that's, Well, that's about, I've talked enough. That's it. I hope that makes sense to you guys. You want to have a look around? Okay. Hey. Hi.
So are there any
Uh,
questions before Danny starts walking around? And then after he starts walking around, some of you will be staying and Larry will be taking over. And Danny, any questions for Danny Lane?
Everybody switch to speaker view now if you want to follow him around, by the way.
That's a good point, Tim Tate. Good job. So why don't you start going around, Danny, and Larry Cybrick, you're on, correct?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep, hear you good.
Okay.
Thank-
Okay,
Oh,
Danny.
wait. Yeah, wait, now, let's get right. Okay, can I hear you now?
Yep.
Oh.
Hi, Larry.
We hear you.
Okay, was somebody gonna ask me something or?
No, I think you're gonna take us through your studio.
Okay, this is a very unusual I-beam shaped piece of glass. We had a little fun here, but you can see here. So this was the area we're in. The area we're in now is it used to be our steel works. And we had a big fire here, not my fault. And so now we have the clean work. This is more a gallery space where when pieces are finished, we bring them up here to have a look. And so we have things from wood over here. This is Isaac Lusky's piece here that we're working on. Then pieces of sculpture when I finish them. This is one of the carved cast pieces. You can see relief, and it's sitting on a plinth. And so I wasn't sure how these pieces would work. And so I needed to really explore how we would light them, how you could light these pieces to make them fly. And so we keep this area very clean and quite safe. This was a proposal for a domestic piece in a light well in a client's house. We're projecting large pieces of glass, maybe 5 meters long. And the fun of it is this sort of kinetic movement as you walk through it. And then when I was doing the piece for Howard, I thought I'd better, just in case something breaks, make another piece of glass. So while it was going along, I made this casting, which is a 4-inch thick casting. Very similar to what I started with, just completed the table, which is for a client in China. He's a wonderful guy. He's quite an important interior designer, gay bodybuilder, very cool guy, nice. And we've just assembled this piece. It's almost complete. And you can see in here how it works. And we've just fitted the glass, and something quite interesting when we go into the edge of the glass. Look at this. And the woodwork has just been crazy. Fleur, who's the great collector of wood, she looked at my wood and she said, "I don't do planks." So these are big planks of wood, but they've had a lot of love put into them, because if somebody's going to eat at this table, we want them to really be able to stare at something and look at it. This is a piece of oak, which has all been neatly filled and cared for. And these pieces of glass basically seem to float on the edge of the table. Let's see. And then pieces like this. So when people come to the studio, I can show them pieces. We've taken them out of the dangerous area of the studio so they don't get destroyed. And, it's my own little space here. And over to something like this. This is a coffee table that was made a couple of years ago. This is all neodymium glass. And this is a cobalt disc, which has been poured board here in the studio. I'll take you through to the furnaces. In a second
Danny?
there. You can see,
Danny?
this is all, yep.
Eddie, what are the, can you focus on a couple of the panels and give us an idea of the size of the panel and a little more of the process?
Yes. Do
Yeah,
you mean
like-
the big casting?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, okay.
Okay. Okay. So if you look at this one is it's called Cornucopia, and this is devitrified glass. Yeah, which we'll know. Oh, it's float glass, and you can just see the memory of the sheets of glass through here. Okay, and all of this has been carved into the plaster. I'll go and show you a block of plaster, a small one, which gives you an idea. This is the plaster when I carve it, you see? And these are free drawn. It's like, I find it very exciting because it's like could say almost abstract expressionist, but in 3D. Now we obviously couldn't carve glass like that. And then this one here is called the Serpent and the Cloud. And what's happened on these pieces, I've taken a lot of the old studio glass, pieces of glass, and it all has to come from the same batch. And I make a huge box of plaster, a meter square, and then I carve into it with the angle grinder, okay? I have a room, a sensory deprivation room, which I can go into and actually work. And these are all part of the new series. One of these was shown at the Corning, there was a show at Corning not long ago.
Thank you.
And yeah, everything here, almost everything here is for sale except for the dining table. That's a commission, and a couple of the small lights. This piece here is called Tempest, and has all of the, this is almost like a desert rose, isn't it? So quite large, and the lighting's quite successful. I'm very happy with the way that lights now. Does that answer your question a bit?
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
And then these are the small castings, okay, that you can see. We make several at a time. And they've all been machined, and they catch the light beautifully. You see the fuse cast together. And then this is the sort of a wall-mounted version where I've mounted them to the wall, and you can see, you can go right in there. It's all a little narrative and story. These were fun. I was working on some of these over lockdown, just getting into it. And then pieces like, this is a glass console, which is the carved glass. Maybe, okay, so then if we go through here, let's see what we've got. This is the studio where we get dirty. Here's one that a new assistant put too much heat on. We're doing this cadmium selenium glass, and she got the thermocouples in the wrong place and exploded. So then over here, look at this color here. This is very exciting. These have just been polished last week. And these discs will probably go into wall pieces. I'm not quite sure. Again, I'm just making the glass and taking great pleasure. And this has all been machined. These are about 2.5 feet in diameter, but the color is delicious. I'm so excited with this color. But if you see when the lights are on, this is the machine that we use to polish it. This fantastic beast here, which I've got a man, he can't use a tape measure, but man, this guy can polish glass. And he works on this great big beast here, machining this glass. And we can do quite large pieces like that. And then a little steel work here, some stone, and then here's some more pieces in here. These are the kilns that I use. This is one of the larger kilns right there. And we hoist them from the ceiling like that. And then through in here are the furnaces, which are shut down. These are these small furnaces designed by my friend David Taylor. And it's called a micro melt. And I've worked it out so we can hoist it in the air and pour about 70 kilograms of glass at a shot. This is Neil Wilkins' old furnace. Neil Wilkins is one of the top technical glass blowers in this country. And David designed that for him. And I've had that. That's electric. And we shut, this is all mothballed. Here's another little kiln here. You get a little idea.
So Danny, has most of your work evolved into hot glass now as opposed to the float glass of several years ago?
I'm really excited with this casting now. You see, like this piece here, this I'm gonna probably mount this on a marble base, but this is a casting that's about 6 or 7 feet long, and it's a huge wedge. And I'm very excited about that. And then pieces like this but I'm still doing the cold glass. This is a bench called Max Planck. And it has a steel base. I've just lumped it, had it put up onto the concrete to show you there. And then things like this, which are quite exciting as well. This is a big desk out of a single plank of wood. But if you look at the legs, they are phenomenally strong, and they're only 2-inch squares. And then you see more of this usual studio rubbish. And then over here is this is a big split wall sculpture that's been prepared. The boys have blanked this out now, and this is all ready to be carved. So we get it into this form. And if you look, if I show you through the drill hole, look, you look right up through that drill hole. That's all the way. That's about 8 feet tall, this sculpture. And then a bit of a wood pile. But let me show you something interesting. This is bizarre. This was an accident, but what an accident. Tim, this is float glass, man.
Beautiful.
I couldn't believe it. It's a piece that was 4 or 5 inches thick, totally devitrified. And then I melted it down. And if you look, the devitrified structure has actually stayed in place. Incredible thing. So, and I'm not sure where that's going to go, but again, experimentation. Then we have things like our forged steel. This is barbed wire tables. And this is the glass cutting table, which is CNC controlled. So this thing, a friend of mine gave it to me, and then we spent like 10,000 getting it operational, but it's good. Nice machine.
Yeah.
And this is, yeah.
Danny, I think we're going to have to consider wrapping things up in the next few minutes. I mean, this
Okay,
has been
good.
unbelievably inspirational. I had the good fortune of seeing your presentation at Intersect Chicago through the Mint Museum, and then years ago on a trip with the Museum of Arts and Design to London.
Ah, yes.
So this has been really a walk down memory lane. And I want to know if there are any questions from anyone who's still on the Zoom. Are there any questions for Danny? This is truly a unique presentation.
There's a lot in the chat, Larry.
Yeah, I saw, but most of them have been answered.
Some haven't. There's a couple saying how many people help. Yeah. Oh, there it is. It's all answered there in the chat. Thanks, Lauren.
So I think most of
Hi.
the,
Well,
does anyone else have any questions for Danny Lane before we go? Listen, Danny, have a great evening.
okay.
Enjoy the
Yep.
evening in London. We're here in the afternoon, and we can't thank you enough for your
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Danny. It's so
Amazing,
great.
Danny. Unbelievable.
Yeah,
Just incredible.
Wait, if we are in London, can we come and visit you,
Really.
Danny?
Absolutely. That's what we love. Please
right,
do.
someone-
Everybody's
somewhere-
welcome.
We need the address posted, or
We'll,
the contact.
we'll post it, but if you go onto my website, which is just dannylane.co.uk, dannylane.co.uk, it has the address and there is a contact number. And
Great.
otherwise, if there's any way of sending messages, I can put out my cell phone. But that's what we're all about, basically, because I am operating outside of the gallery system currently. I don't, we have a couple of dealers who help us out, but I'm pretty much working from here, from the studio. And so here in London, everybody comes through London sooner or later. So we more than welcome people, and we do a pretty good lunch. Well,
I hope sooner rather than later.
All right. Danny,
please do.
Great to see you, mate.
Lovely.
and thanks
Yeah.
all.
Great presentation.
Thank you all for coming,
Great.
supporting the Friday meetups, and we'll see you next week as usual. And all be well. Take care.
Total pleasure,
Great.
Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stay in touch. God bless.